Welcome into the DNVR Gaming podcast brought to you by WGT Golf. Remember to download it totally for free today at DNVRGolf.com on either your laptop or phone. I'm your host, Drew Kreisman. Joining me for this one is AJ Hafley. We may or may not have other people drop in as we discuss the biggest topic, I think, going on right now in sort of the gaming world, and the drop of the Mortal Kombat trailer very recently here, AJ. And there's been a lot of other big gaming movie news. The Last of Us has had some casting news out there. Uncharted continues to move forward, and it looks like maybe potentially we're moving into a better, happier time in video game movie history. Are you there yet?
Maybe. I mean, it's hard to feel like we're not moving into a positive direction, right? Because I believe you've seen the Sonic movie and you liked it.
Yes. Yes.
The Detective Pikachu movie was killer.
Yes.
So I
Ryan
feel
Reynolds helps.
Sure, but you know he's an actor. It turns out when you hire those guys to be in your movies, things don't work out, right?
Weird.
No, I feel like we're at least trending in the right direction here. It's a small sample size, but that's how comic book movies started too. You and I remember how when X-Men came out, you know, with Hugh Jackman and Halle Berry, and it was like, we've seen how this goes. This is gonna be bad, and it was totally acceptable. And then X-Men was
right.
Great, and then all of a sudden, the MCU was like, should we be born?
Should we maybe do that?
And they, you know, people are now. Comic book movies are so successful that people are sick of them.
Right.
So I feel like we've got a good chance here.
Yeah, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head there. I think it's going to take a certain similar understanding. You know, I like to refer to those movies before the 2000s and as you said, really the X2 as the Tim Burton style of creating comic book movies, which was basically to take the iconography, the symbols that everyone's familiar with, the things people like, but then totally get rid of everything else, the themes, the stories, and just do your own Hollywood thing with it. And so comic book movies were okay, but they existed on this kind of spectrum, and I feel like, you know, that's kind of where video game movies have been at. And now it looks like, and I think one of the biggest symbols of that is to get us back to Mortal Kombat, right? So it's like the original Mortal Kombat movies. I actually have a soft spot in my heart for the very first one, as silly and goofy as it is. There's some quality like fight sequencing in there and whatever. But the biggest thing is like they were PG-13 movies at a time when Mortal Kombat was known for one thing.
Yeah. Fatality?
Yeah. These like over-the-top violent sequences. And so, again, they took the iconography of Mortal Kombat, but none of its ethos, none of what made it popular in the first place. And now, at the very least, it looks like whether this movie ends up being good or not, this trailer is like, hey, that looks like Mortal Kombat.
I think it's interesting because Mortal Kombat is one of the few fighting franchises that has at least attempted to weave an actual storyline into it.
Right.
Whereas like Smash Brothers is like, here's a ton of Nintendo characters fighting each other. You know? And Street Fighter is kind of the same way. There's like a story to it.
Yeah.
But the rest of it is the most other fighters are just like, pick a dope-looking fighter, find the guy that fits your style, and go learn how to beat the other guy up.
Right.
And so Mortal Kombat's one of the few fighters that can actually translate to potentially to the movie setting. But I also think it's interesting because you would think fighters are perfect for movies because they lend themselves to awesome action sequences.
Right.
One-on-one fighting.
Right.
I mean, look at how incredibly popular John Wick ended up.
Right.
In large part because people liked watching the fighting. They liked watching John Wick kill people. Now that's John Wick against a bunch of endless bad guys. You know 1-800 henchmen.
Right.
But Mortal Kombat will be like established characters that people have devoted hours to learning all of the moves and all of the combinations, and they're going to be looking. People are going to be. I play Sub-Zero. I'm going to be looking at Sub-Zero and
right.
saying where are all of the different moves that I use in the games. So it's going to be different. It's going to be a little more intense, but I think it opens up the opportunity to connect with your fan base in that way. Because let's be real, you're making it for them. They're not making a Mortal Kombat movie for people who don't care even the slightest bit about Mortal Kombat.
Yeah, I think that's been one of the big shifts kind of in entertainment over the last 10 to 15 years anyway, especially with introductions of like streaming services and all that. Like,
yeah,
like when we were kids, I feel like if you wanted something to be successful, you had to make it for everybody, which meant, reaching across the aisle to people who this isn't necessarily for. And you're exactly right. You don't have to do that anymore. This can be a Mortal Kombat movie.
Batman Forever.
Totally. Like, this is trying to be for everybody and ends up being for nobody. Whereas, yeah, I think you're right. Like, the harder they lean into, let's make sure that all the Mortal Kombat fans love this. And it kind of works the way, back to the Marvel thing, not to use them as the example for success, but they kind of are. It's like, my girlfriend wasn't big into comic books growing up or whatever, and you watch a couple of these movies, you go, this is fun. Now I want to learn more about it from you, the hardcore person, the people that are into it, right? And I think the Mortal Kombat, like video game movies, could work in the same way. It doesn't have to be, they're going to make Metal Gear Solid, supposedly, with, what's his name? It's Oscar Isaac. He's going to play Snake. Yeah. And it's like, that has so much potential, and it could be something where if that movie's really good, then people can come to someone like me who's super into that series and go, what is this all about? And it's like, let me tell you. There's so much fun to be had there, but you got to lean hard into it.
Yeah, the way that I see it is that if you don't make the fans of the series happy, nobody else is gonna like it,
right?
Because you're appealing to them first and foremost, and I say this after a lot of heavy criticism of Star Wars, where it's like, I think that's a different level because that's a perpetually unhappy fan base.
Right.
But like, I do think that the idea is correct in appease the hardcore Mortal Kombat fans. Get them invested into it, and then draw like you and I don't think you and I are big fighter guys.
Not huge.
Like I'll play them. I own several of them, and I play them every once in a while. But it's not like a focus of my gaming time. But I'll absolutely spend the money to go see it. One, because I want to support the idea of making more video game movies, and two, because this is I'm kind of the target demographic here. I have no problem being like, you guys got me.
Right, totally. I'll see it right away. It is fun, as you mentioned, because I've always been into this franchise in particular, so I'm not a huge fighting game person, but I've played most of the mainline Mortal Kombat games, some Street Fighter along the way, but never gotten into things like Guilty Gear or anything like that, or any of the King of Fighters, Smash Bros is a different category altogether, and we both get into that because Nintendo is awesome.
I'm kind of surprised the DC fighter isn't something that you're into.
I just totally left that out. Injustice, actually, I'm super into Injustice. Injustice 1 and 2 they're very, very good. Yeah. Very good. It's
my favorite fighter in the last several years.
Yeah. And it's made by the same people who make Mortal Kombat now. And so, they take kind of a similar we really want our characters to drive your love for playing this game. So it's not just I want to beat people, but I want, as you said, I want to be Sub-Zero, I want to be Scorpion. These kind of classic iconic characters that have been there from the very beginning, that you see them all in this trailer, right? It's built around Sonya Blade and Jax and Kano and Raiden and the classics, and there's really no reason to stray from that cast because it's dope.
I watched the trailer just before we started this. I spent the whole time being like, where's my guy Liu Kang?
Yeah.
Where he at? And then he shows up and he's like, I'm Liu Kang. And I was like, there he is.
Look,
oh, man.
Yeah, and it looks like him. He does a dragon thing, and you're like, that's Liu Kang.
Yeah. The fan service, I think, was already great in that trailer. If you're a Mortal Kombat fan, I don't know how you could get through that trailer and not feel like, okay, well, I have to see this now. You know, you got Sub-Zero fighting Scorpion at the very end of it, which is like the iconic Mortal Kombat matchup that everybody cares about.
Right.
He throws it out there, gives him the get over here, and you're just like, come on, they're trying. Like, this is exactly what they should be doing. They are catering to the fans.
Right. They no longer feel like the need to apologize or run away from it. I think the biggest example of that may actually be the tiny little bit that all trailers have after they give you the date, and then there's that one last little 3 to 5 second clip of something, and it's Kano wins, and he's holding the. And if you watch the Red Band, he drops an F-bomb too, which gives you everything you need to know. They know it's a fighting game. They know it's about fighting. They know it's about violence and swearing, and for adults, like, it's all right there in that 3 to 5 seconds.
Well, and the level of violence in the trailer too.
Yeah.
Where you're like, okay, they're not PG-13 in this up. You know, it's graphic. It's the Scorpion strike cuts a dude's arm off. You know, you're like, okay, well, this is gonna get. And I did really like also the you heard towards the end you heard the finish it, and you're like, sweet, because if we get some fatalities up in here, it's gonna be great. My question is like, it looks like this this journey of self-discovery, which is relatable on every level, because every human goes through that journey in their life, figuring out who they are at their core and like where they come from and where they belong, and finding their place in the world. And so that's kind of the feel I got from that trailer, is that's what they're are they gonna, if they're gonna be the tournament, are they setting this up for like a series of movies where the tournament takes place, in a different movie? Or is it, because it felt very origin story-ish, where you're like, look, I love a good origin story. Mortal Kombat is all about the tournament.
Yeah.
Is it going to actually happen? Are we going to see like random matchups here?
Right. Seems like a lot of getting to the tournament. I agree. And
I've criticized trailers a lot lately for being too. Anytime I see a 2.5
giving away
trailer,
the whole damn movie,
I get nervous, because I'm like, oh boy, a 2.5 minute trailer is going to tell me everything I need to know about the movie, including how it freaking ends. So I'm curious to see. They did a good job of leaving that open, but I am curious to see. Are we getting the tournament, or are we getting the journey to the tournament, and then it's like a fight or two?
Right.
So I think that'll be important to me.
Totally agree. And how they handle this new main character, Cole, I think is his name, right? And I think this is an interesting idea, because Mortal Kombat can maybe pull this off. You couldn't get away with it in, say, The Last of Us or Uncharted, these games where the main characters are iconic and they have to drive the plot and story. Like if you did Uncharted and you were like, but it's not Nathan Drake, we'll meet him, here's a new character, people would, no, get away from me with this, right? Like, here I think it could work though.
Go come see the Uncharted movie with Nelson Davis.
Come on, everybody, right? Like, Or you could do, like, I actually think for some of the series that are closer to our hearts, if you were to do a Warcraft again or differently or Final Fantasy stories, I think you can tell those by having a character who's basically an avatar for the audience, right? That's what this guy is meant to do, is to bring us into the world of Mortal Kombat, and then all these other characters come around. And if done well, I think that's a really compelling way to do it. But there's
side door.
There's a trick if this guy isn't lovable and doesn't do the job well, and then it's like, oh, we spent all this time with this new guy that none of us cared about to begin with, and we only got 8 minutes of screen time out of Sub-Zero or something like that, which doesn't look like it's going to happen, but I think that's a fine line you walk when you start introducing these totally new elements, when you are trying to tell a true to the original story. Going to be fascinating to see how that pans out.
Yeah, I'm less worried about it than I would say normally, because you can the freedom that introducing your own character with its own story they have is that they can kind of do whatever they want, and so it's going to be. I will say I worry about overexposure with that character. Where, okay, like I get that he's like the focus here, that this is what we're keeping an eye on or whatever, but I'm. Like a lot of us are going to go watch that movie and want to watch the characters that we like. So if you only get, Sonya Blade's introduction, like I'm Sonya, and she smokes a couple of randos, and then you don't see her most of the rest of the movie. She's like a background character as they like travel together to the tournament. She's just like in the background hanging out. Maybe she kills a random person if they get into a fight. But they don't spend time with her. I think that's the concern, is that they spend too much time with the main character and they don't let the cast breathe a little bit. Because you want to be invested. Especially if they have the tournament, you want to be invested with whatever matchup they end up with.
Right.
You want to feel like, oh man, I've gotten to like this character over the movie. I really don't want to watch this dude get his head, get his heart ripped out in a fatality here in 4 minutes. Right.
Yeah, there's some pretty great potential. I'm excited about it. I did see. Oh, let me see if I can bring up here. So we ran a poll on DNVR Gaming, and I was kind of surprised by the results, because I think you hear the negativity about the video game movies, and we all understand why that's the case. We've all lived through it together. We're all in this thing. I actually own the original Super Mario Brothers movie on DVD for funsies. There's elements of it that I find hilarious, but it's obviously objectively a terrible movie. No one's trying to make that claim, but it's just like we've all been there, right? But here it is. So, of the people that voted here about how you feeling about the new Mortal Kombat movie, 33%, the most of any category, said cautiously optimistic, with second place being just straight up hype. Then in third place, kind of a meh feeling. Now, I may have weighted this one too much, because I said all game movies suck for the bottom category. And maybe some people could have just said, well, this game movie might suck.
That's the thing, though, is that there are people who write these off because they're like, oh, video game movies are bad.
Yeah.
I'm not going to see it because of that.
Yeah.
So I think it was appropriate.
Yeah.
Because you have two legitimately excited levels there. Important distinction between the two. And then you have kind of the almost apathetic crowd where they're like, if I hear it's good, I'll see it. And then you have the like, I'm out. I'm hard out. Video game movies are great.
Yeah.
So I'm surprised by that poll too.
Yeah. I think that's pretty cool that people are at least cautiously optimistic for the most part about it. And, I think that leaves open the door. Do it well, and we can do more of these. So what are some of these other ones that are coming up that you could maybe be most cautiously optimistic about? And then we can talk about some of Cygnus saying, or we could go right into this, whichever way you want to go with it. What games just would make great movies? He's suggesting Spec Ops: The Line. I will say, I mentioned the Metal Gear Solid one earlier. I've always thought that if done well, the first Metal Gear Solid would make a great movie. The rest of them get really difficult when it comes to like the meta stuff and all the game mechanics that are important. But I think the first Metal Gear Solid with the Shadow Moses Island, and for those of you that know, it's a very isolated incident that I think can make a great movie. And the guy like Oscar Isaac playing Snake, you get a great director, you do that well, I think that could work well. So that's the one I'm most cautiously optimistic about, because again, if the trend is we're going closer and closer to the original stories, we're letting the source material do more of the legwork, and we're working on just presenting it cinematically in a way that translates, the original story of Metal Gear Solid is just too damn good. It's complicated and difficult to tell, but it's really good. So
sorry.
It's all right.
Allie was also messaging me about work stuff.
Oh, okay.
The ad schedule changed. So.
Again?
No.
Okay.
No, not again. Because previously. Anyway.
Oh boy.
I'm not familiar with Spec Ops: The Line at all. I know that there was a lot of controversy surrounding its release, but it's not my kind of game.
Yeah.
So I just left it alone. Also from the comments, wanting a great World War I game. Can we get one where you actually get to kill like the Archduke and start World War I?
Right.
Instead of it being like, hey, here you get just dropped into another setting with a bunch of tanks, and you're running around and you're just killing indiscriminate number of people in service of the large war. Can we get like a World War game where you actually get to like be behind the scenes of some of the cool stuff that happens?
Right.
Like, cool stuff. Like,
well, yeah.
You know what I mean? Not like world wars are awesome. Like,
right. In the way that, I think that would be really interesting. I
feel like after 20 years of watching war games being made, we need a different approach.
Yeah. I totally agree with that. What else? Because we got some talks of Call of Duty being World War I Battlefield.
Yeah. Did you ever draw a line? Did you ever pick a franchise, Call of Duty or Battlefield?
It's funny. Back
in the day, Medal of Honor.
I was gonna say I was kind of a Medal of Honor guy.
Yeah, that's where I started. I started in Medal of Honor.
And I, enjoyed those games, but I think I just kind of had my fill. I don't know. There came a point where I just didn't want to play realistic war games anymore, and Halo 2 kind of just replaced that. I was like, I would so much rather run around and shoot space aliens than Nazis for whatever reason. And like, I don't know.
Once you played like 5 World War, because you remember in the early 2000s,
it was like all World War II all the time.
2000 to like 2007-ish, 8-ish maybe.
Yeah.
God, it was like World War II historians were making bank because they were getting brought in on every single video game project.
Right.
Like, okay, well, we're gonna look. Yes, it is a World War II game, but here's our twist.
Right.
It's just like, okay, got it. I totally got it. You're killing Nazis. At the end of the day, you're up there.
And like even Wolfenstein like cornered the "but we've got a twist" thing like a while ago. So it's like, but I don't, if people get really into Call of Duty or Battlefield, I understand. I've heard.
I don't think people get really into those games anymore because of what they're up to. I think they just they go online and now especially with Warzone, and the battle royale craze, people go on there and they're just like, oh look, my friends get the new iteration. This is how I stay connected with my friends.
Yeah, totally. I think someone in the comments was saying that part of the problem with video game movies in the past, has been that developers and studios not understanding that it's hundreds of hours of lore and, trying to fit it all into one game. And that's another thing that, not to keep giving all this credit to Marvel, but, age of expanded universes. I know that's something people have already become cynical about. It's like, oh, everything needs to be an expanded universe or everything needs to have sequels and stuff. It's like, look, if you want to, I highly support anyone who wants to go out and support indie art house flicks that are one-off, hour and a half or 2 hour long stories that just are there and done, and I have nothing wrong with that. I love those kinds of movies, some of my favorite kinds of movies. But one of the nice things about audiences now being familiar with the idea of, yes, this movie could be tied to another movie or to another video game, is that you can tell much larger stories. You can do these video game stories justice. So I think there's a few of them, some we're probably not even thinking of, that will be better off because of that kind of expanded way of making movies now. Like Warcraft would be far better served if it was done just like the Marvel Cinematic Universe, right? If maybe there were a couple of movies that worked as big event films, but there were TV shows that you would follow in between, or it's even tied straight to the games. Like, if you would know more than I would, but it seems perfect for that style of multifaceted storytelling.
Yeah, those are, I watched the Warcraft movie because of a girl, and it wasn't bad. Honestly, I really didn't. I understood that a lot of people hated it or whatever, but I really didn't think it was problematic. I thought it was dope. And I think then I really started to play the games, and I haven't even, I started playing in the expansion before the one that the game is on now. So there's like a full decade worth of lore that I don't know shit about.
Yeah.
Let alone like books and other stuff, that is in the universe. Like just the main game storylines. I don't know anything about it. I never went back and did it. Because it's just much. But the problem when you try and make a franchise like that into a movie. One, where do you start? How do you pick which story to tell?
Right.
If you tell a story that's already been told, what are you doing different with it? How true to the source material do you stay? If you try and tell a story that hasn't really been told and it's kind of a Rogue One-ish, like we know that this thing happened because it gets referenced, but we never actually saw it, so that's the story that we want to tell. You might end up in too small of a niche that you're just like, this was not how you wanted to do this. I think the Warcraft universe is deserving of translation to TVs and movies. I just think it should be serialized content. It should be It should be a Netflix show. The way that they did Castlevania is a perfect model for what the Warcraft. Because how many Castlevania games are there? Where do you start?
Right. Totally.
And so what they did is they started and they were like, this is the core premise of Castlevania, and we're just going to tell the big story. And they did it in a really cool way that even I, a noted anime disliker,
I didn't know that about you.
Okay.
Okay, that's an interesting conversation. That's adjacent to this. Yeah.
Is that sarcasm?
No, we've never wandered upon this particular. I didn't know this.
Man. I hate it.
Wow.
Hate it. Actively
Okay.
hate it. Okay. Castlevania was great, and I watched it and I was like, we'll see about this, and I loved it. I thought it was great, and I think that it sets up a universe like Warcraft perfectly, where you say, look, you don't need everything to be live action. You can make a great animated series that tells all these stories. To be honest with you, I would almost be more interested in because it gets brought up all the time when this conversation is broached, but Mass Effect.
Yeah.
Should it be a movie?
Yes. Well, it should be several. It should be a show. It should either be several movies or a show with a huge, like, Game of Thrones style budget. You need a budget for Mass Effect is the thing.
Or do you make it an animated series? And it makes
that's how you solve the budget problem.
It makes it easier easier to make, and you can do more things with it because you're not having to constantly figure out, how am I translating this to the real world? How are we making this live act? Would it be great for me, world's biggest Mass Effect fan, to I should say DNVR's biggest Mass Effect fan. But
some people out there.
Do I? Yeah, right. do I need to see a live action? Would I love to see it? Would I love to see, the Citadel come to life and people wandering around? Oh my god, I would probably cry. But would I rather see a great television series get made over a bad movie just because I wanted to see the Citadel IRL? I would just rather there be a good, whatever piece of content. I would rather it be quality media for me to consume about my favorite series versus trying to force the live action thing. Because so much of that series is going to be hard to translate. How do you translate the choices that get made? You literally have to choose which characters live and die in the game.
Right.
You're going to alienate some part of your fan base.
Yeah. Yeah.
So do you follow the main storyline? The answer should be yes. It's an amazing storyline.
Right.
And I would say, part of the appeal of Mass Effect 2, for example, the side missions that you do with all the characters. It's a huge part of why that game is the way is
right.
loved the way that it is. How do you handle that in a movie? You don't have time in a movie to go tell these in-depth, expansive, character-specific stories while also keeping an eye on the overarching story of we're building towards going through the Omega Relay and we don't know what's on the other side.
Right.
It should be a TV series.
Yeah, I agree. And actually, this process just kind of happened with the Final Fantasy series, and I had to live through it because for so damn long, my brother, it was a 32-minute mark. Hey, we spent all that time on Warcraft. My brother and I have been talking about how great a Final Fantasy live action movie could be for a very long time. The problems were always what we had just talked about here. You got to cut out so many of the side stories and side quests and all these other things, and you got to really streamline it, or maybe you turn it into a trilogy, you do whatever. And then they signed a deal a couple of years ago. I was like, okay, they're going to do a big live action movie, but then that slowly got whittled away, and they decided, no, they're going to do a live action show, and they're not going to do a retelling of any one of the individual games. They're going to set it in the world of the MMO so that they can kind of pick and choose whatever parts of the entire multiverse that they want, which is so fascinating. It's not getting close to
option.
You would think so, right? But for people, it's weird because from a marketing standpoint, it'd be so easier if you could just slap Cloud on the front of the thing and be like, we're going to tell you the story of Final Fantasy VII over the course of 22 episodes of television or something.
Casting Kefka from 6?
Totally. Oh, I've thought about so many. 6 is always the one that Ira and I would come back to and try to cast like it was Game of Thrones or something like that and just plan it out over it.
Do a Game of Thrones style series for 6.
It'd be so damn good, and it would. I don't even think it'd be that hard to do. I know, right? And that's the great thing is you don't even have to mess up the ending. It's already got a great ending. So just let it happen and cast all of those people with really good actors and tell the story as is. But you would need at least 2 seasons of a Netflix show to get that to work.
I was thinking 5 seasons.
5? Yeah.
Yeah, to try and tell the entire, get into the Final Fantasy 6, that's, that's where I would do.
Yeah. But what's interesting is that the MMO in 14, they kind of treat everything like it's canon, and all of those stories exist in the multiverse, to the extent that you even get to go and straight up visit the world of Final Fantasy 12 and stuff. And Kefka's in it, for example. So in setting it there, they can kind of do whatever they want, pull on the entire history of the lore, and we won't know what's going to happen. But it's a weird way to go with it. But at the very least, they're doing it as a TV show. So it's like, yeah, I think that's the recognition that if you want to tell these stories, that's how you have to do it. You just wonder about budgets and stuff. But
yeah,
I think Mass Effect could be dope if, again, done really well.
Yeah, I've always been really iffy about the idea of a movie because if you just tell the first game, if you just stick to the main storyline of the first game, you don't get to know any of these other people. That comment cracks me up.
Just one episode where you're just out there mining.
Yeah, where you're just skating, because in Mass Effect 2, it's a huge part of it. You just
right
on the planet.
Hey, there are episodes of
Fire
Star
off
Trek:
the
The Next
road.
Generation that are kind of, you know.
But no, like
Yeah.
if you just tell the main storyline of Mass Effect, it would be a great movie.
Yeah.
But you don't get to know the universe at all that way. You don't get to really understand the complicated geopolitical stuff that takes place between all the races, all the the first contact war where, Turians and humans and, Batarians, et cetera, they're all after each other. And it's like understanding once you get dropped into Mass Effect, you start to learn humans are the new race in the galaxy and they are widely disrespected. Why that is, why the views of the other races towards humanity and how humanity is it's still in its youth when you compare it to, the other races.
Yeah.
And the different philosophies and the different approaches, the Krogan.
That's the
War
best
and
part.
the
You got to dive into
Solarians.
all that. Yeah.
It's what makes the universe, because they
Right.
can just tell the main story,
Like the plot. Yeah.
like Saren, the betrayal of the council, the Saren and all of everything that he does. It's not a spoiler. He's literally the bad guy in the first mission of the game.
Right.
And finding out like the entire overarching Reaper storyline and like just that, if they just focus on the Saren storyline, that it could be a great movie, but you would miss everything that makes Mass Effect Mass Effect.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and it would just be so much cooler and better to do it the other way. I agree. I think that would be a lot of fun. So, okay, I have a couple questions for you now that I have information that I did not previously have. Have you seen the Halo animated shorts? A collection of animation. What's it called? I'm forgetting right now because I didn't know we were going to talk about this today. But it's basically like the Animatrix. Another one. Have you seen the Animatrix? Or there's something, so yeah, basically they're collections of animated shorts set in the series, right? So the Animatrix is one of my favorite collections of animes, and the Halo ones are really, really good. It's the same thing where it's like different artists and directors do a series of short stories that just take place in the universe of Halo. They don't really have anything they're not like starring Master Chief or anything like that. They're just people who are out there, and some of them are really good. I think it's on Netflix, so I highly recommend check that out and see if it stands up to your hating or not hating of anime. Now, Red versus Blue is a different thing, though. Those are hilarious. Definitely not anime. Okay, are there any other anime that you do like? Just have you seen Akira or Ghost in the Shell?
No.
Okay.
I saw
Okay.
Spirited Away.
I don't know if those count, but Hayao Miyazaki films are kind of their own thing. But
That's what I've been told.
yeah, I mean, those are all objectively amazing. Princess Mononoke and Spirited Away and stuff.
Yeah, people go crazy over Princess Mononoke. Man.
It's one of my favorite movies ever, actually. Princess Mononoke. One of my
More
tops.
people who have seen it feel that way, I think.
Yeah, it's really good. Yeah, I am an old school anime lover there, Victor. Have you seen Ninja Scroll or Cowboy Bebop?
I've
Gundam?
seen Cowboy
But-
Bebop.
Cowboy Bebop's pretty good. I think it's a.
I reference the Doom song every once in a while during ad
Oh,
season. Usually once or twice during the year I reference it because they go on like a 3 or 4 game losing streak and people lose their shit, and I'm like,
right, it's
time for the Doom song.
No, doom. Those are some classics. I gotta say one newer one for the 5 people who want the recommendations and the 2 people who really don't. Death Note on Netflix, not the live action one. The live action one is embarrassingly terrible. The anime Death Note, which is like 22 or 24 episodes long in totality, it's like a 1-season thing, is very, 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 very good, and not your typical anime experience either. Like, there's almost no action in it. Most anime are action adventure things, and this is like a thinky mystery talkie show, but it's very good. So yeah, that's interesting. So you have an aversion to the anime. I'll have to see if I can get one or two in front of you that you like. But I want the Halo one. I'd be very curious to see, because I think the stories are told well enough that you might find it compelling.
For the record, my biggest aversion to anime is the art style. The really bright colors and the really like high-pitched voices and the over-the-top animation with like the big eyes and the crazy reactions and all that. It hurts to watch.
There's a certain style there that I can't. Oh no, yeah, it's painful.
It physically. I don't. The loud. It hurts my head. I'm just like. So if you get like a little more, like if you watch like Castlevania, you don't see that stuff.
Right.
Like it's graphic and all that, but there's a certain art style that's dope.
Right. There's that's a particular style of anime that I can't stand either. And anytime I start to watch something and they start doing that, I go, nope, sorry, this might be good. A lot of people have told me this was going to be really good, but it sucks. Vampire Hunter D is another fantastic one with all the art from Vampire Hunter D is by the Final Fantasy artist, Yoshitaka Amano. Really, really good. I love Vampire Hunter D. And the follow-up, Bloodlust. So, yep, Castlevania was dope, but that's the one. The one homework is to watch the Halo thing. We'll have to catch up on that next time and talk about what you thought of that. Now Steph is throwing out ones I don't even know. Vinland Saga. She hardcore. Coming up here.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah. So, any other games that we think should be made into movies that haven't been yet?
I mean, I think Last of Us was. I think it's a really interesting, like. It's already so cinematic. I'm not sure why you would want to make that into a movie. You could literally go on YouTube and watch all of the
all the cutscenes.
All the cutscenes put together. Yeah. You'll get the story, you'll get the emotion, you'll get the feeling, you'll get the idea, and I feel like you will have just watched it's probably like an hour long, but you will have watched like the movie.
Yeah.
Have
you done that with games before? I've done that with a few. Yeah.
Because there are certain things. I did it with some Warcraft stuff to try and catch up on lore. Yeah. And then I realized how behind I was, and I was like, well, I don't have the rest of my life to dedicate to this. So
right.
I'm good. But the Arthas story would actually, I do know that one. Arthas, the Lich King, that would be awesome. But no, I don't think The Last of Us needs to be made into a movie. I feel like Uncharted, on the other hand, would be a great movie because it's a classic, like it's a treasure hunting movie, and like now I am extremely biased here as a person who will see any movie that involves the words heist or treasure hunt. I will see it.
Right.
But Uncharted is just perfectly. It's a perfect fit for a typical action movie.
Yeah. Did you see the new Tomb Raider?
Did I? Yeah, I saw the Tomb Raider with
the Tomb Raider. No, there's a new one with some British gal that I totally forgotten about until you were just saying it. Yeah, yeah. I don't think it got much publicity. But I heard it was okay. Oh, Horizon Zero Dawn. I think that's another one that has a similar swashbuckling adventure.
Such a big part of that game's appeal, though, was the incredible aesthetics involved in it. So you'd want to try and recapture that.
Yeah, yeah. You need that right look and feel for sure.
It would be awesome, though.
But yeah. Yeah, I think there's a lot out there and I agree. You've got to find that right balance of like, what are you gaining by turning this into a film? And there are going to be quite a few. We're moving into that age where, yeah, like my mom watched the entirety of the 7 remake over a weekend. It was like 8 or 9 hour YouTube video that, the graphics are so good. It's essentially a really well animated movie on its own. There's no reason. She's like, this is beautiful. She didn't need it to be a live action thing. So it's like, what are we doing this for?
It feels like that is a thing that we get bogged down into when we talk about making some of these into movies. Is the whole like it has to be live action. Like look at Transformers. Was it so cool to see Transformers live action as they transform and like Optimus Prime goes from being a truck and then all of a sudden he busts out these weapons and he's like chopping these like pieces of these dudes up and he's like huge sword right through there. Yeah, it was awesome, but those movies were garbo. And part of
first one was all right.
Part of it was the limitations of the live action setting. Because you need to cast people to be the crux of your story. And so much of what was interesting about Transformers had nothing at all to do with humans.
Right.
And it was just like the live action format. It was really cool to see them come to life, but it just wasn't worth it in the end.
Right.
I would rather have them stayed on their planet and told the origin story.
Yeah. Yeah. And Victor, we're both going to be with you on this one. Everyone, any way Chrono Trigger could come back in any capacity at all would make us all very happy. Remake the game. How about just put the game on the PlayStation Network? How about that? How about just make it available? I want to see a remake. I want to see an animated series. I want to see the third Chrono game that was promised to me 20 years ago. I would. I think a Chrono Trigger animated series that ran 20 episodes could be incredible and just tell the story as it. Use the same style. Get Akira Toriyama to do it. Like, just that one seems like it would be easy. Like, how hard would it be to make Chrono Trigger? It's almost already that.
Call it Chrono Assault.
There you go. I would be. That's when you talked about, like, I would cry if I saw that. If the trailer came out, I was like, there's going to be a Chrono Trigger show. I would be like...
This is the it's also kind of like, how did they choose Mortal Kombat?
That's the other thing. We've had multiple Mortal Kombat movies, Street Fighter, a couple of Street Fighter movies, terrible Chun-Li movie.
I've said this before on this show, but low-key, there is a Street Fighter movie on YouTube that people should go watch. It's actually, it gets into the origins of Ken and Ryu, and it's amazing.
There's a Mortal Kombat one as well. Legacy is the name of it. If you go and find it, it does origin stories for all the different characters. It's really, really cool. But yeah, it is funny that like all these fighting games you talked about, like the fighting game genre is not where the good stories in video games come from. Yeah. We have a Super Mario Brothers movie. Like, why? We have, all these other, it's like a Crazy Taxi movie. Get out of here with it. You have all the Uwe Boll movies where he's making like Postal and stuff like that, and that garbage.
He made that terrible vampire game.
Yeah, Blood Rain.
Yep,
did he make Blood Rain? Yeah,
he made Blood Rain. Yep.
Meanwhile,
those games were okay.
they're okay, right?
How the hell did they become the ones that we decided to adapt into movies? I don't know.
It's like Halo, Metal Gear Solid, Zelda, Final Fantasy, all that stuff sitting right there, and we're making movies out of it.
What's amazing about Final Fantasy is that every game is a contained storyline.
Right.
You don't have to worry about, like, you don't care that there's 1,500 Final Fantasy games.
Right.
You don't need those. All you have to do is just look at one of them and be like, okay, we're good. Like when you talk about translating Mass Effect to a movie, those 3 games built upon each other.
Right.
There's 100 hours of storyline that you're trying to condense there. It's not the case in Final Fantasy.
Right.
You know, the Tales series is something too. You could take Tales of Symphonia would be an amazing movie if you had just stuck to the main story.
Yeah. Right.
It would be awesome. You know, you don't have to waste a bunch of time messing around in forests with 3 different characters and shit. You just tell the main storyline of the Tree of Life.
Yeah. I think we're getting there, man. I think one day, you know, if you would have told me 10, 15 years ago that the biggest movie ever would be built around Infinity War, the Infinity Gauntlet, from that, and the Thanos snap would be something that everyone's grandmother knew about. I would have been, you're crazy. There's no way. There is no way that's going to happen.
That's how the MCU started too, though. This is why the Mortal Kombat thing gives me a little bit of hope, because the MCU started with Iron Man.
Right.
It didn't start with Captain America. It didn't start with Thor. It didn't start with the X-Men. The X-Men was its own contained fiasco. It didn't even start with Spider-Man. Like, they tried all of those, and like there were some like levels of success there, but it didn't truly pop until the MCU started, and it happened to be with Iron Man. Which really just goes to show you the importance of casting.
Right.
Because Robert Downey Jr. was the perfect Tony Stark. They nailed it. You know, it's like getting Hugh Jackman to play a lifetime of Wolverine, and somehow we got one good Wolverine movie. Now, granted, it was the last one, and they nailed it, but it sure feels like we wasted Hugh Jackman as the perfect Wolverine. It just wasted it.
It could have been a lot better. I won't go that far. Maybe just because Logan's like probably my favorite comic book movie. It's
Logan is a masterpiece of a movie.
Somehow it's so good it retroactively makes the movies before it that weren't as good better. Like even the silly, terrible Origins Wolverine movie that it references it a couple of times in Logan. You're like, oh, that makes that one scene in that movie actually matter, even though it didn't originally. Like that's powerful.
The only thing that mattered in Origins was every scene Gambit was in.
Hashtag not my Gambit.
I love Taylor Kitsch.
I did too.
He was great as Tim Riggins, lifelong Riggins for life. But
but yeah, I agree. Cast it correctly, and this final comment here from Mr. Fahrenheit. You know, we went back to this in Mortal Kombat, making it R rather than PG-13, and that really goes into understanding the mood of your movie. If you're
capturing the tone of your source material is a huge part of it. We watched Wolverine go through how many movies where he wasn't allowed to just rip people up,
right?
And then as soon as they did, you got one scene into Logan where he's defending his limousine, and you're like, this is gonna be way, way different,
right?
And it's the best they ever did by a country mile, man.
Yeah. I'm a big Days of Future Past guy, but that's a conversation. Yeah, that movie rocks. But you're right. There's always those parts where you're like, why doesn't he just cut that dude's arm off like he would in the comic books?
Yeah, you're like that. Those claws should be going through that guy's chest.
Right.
He should be getting thrown across the room.
Right.
But he's not allowed to do it because PG-13.
Right. All right. Well, yeah, I would agree with our poll that I am generally cautiously optimistic about really all of this stuff.
Yeah.
We're moving in the right direction, I think.
Mortal Kombat, if it works, it's a jumping off point to more of these. Tom Holland as Nathan Drake works.
Right.
It's a jumping off point, and really, like, talk about nailing casting.
Right.
The best Spider-Man.
Oh, for sure. And if he gets this Nathan Drake thing, right, that'll be interesting to see him. Like, how long can he be two different iconic characters?
Yeah. He's gonna end up like the Harrison Ford-esque career.
Right. It's just like
Indiana Jones and Han Solo.
Right. It's just gonna be both of these people. Like, oh, come on, man. Except for the rest of us. All right. Well, thanks everyone for.
Great job.
Yeah, just keep nailing it. Thanks everyone for hanging out. Let us know what you think of these upcoming movies, what other video games you think would be well turned into movies, and maybe do some casting. I guess that's the one thing we could have gotten deeper into here. Oh, final question. You're on the clock here. Who are you going to cast as Shepard? I was going to ask you that Mass Effect conversation.
No, well, I'm not making a live action movie, so I don't have to worry about it.
Weak. Fair enough. I know. If you were, you gotta. It's just too fun. Because you can cast literally anyone you want as Shepard, right? Like that's one of those. But fair enough. It's like it doesn't have to be any specific thing, but that's maybe why it's an impossible question to answer.
Yeah, well, I guess the first question is are you doing male or female Shepard?
Right. That would be a big, and even if you were doing the animated show, you'd probably have to make that decision for your audience.
Yeah.
So, but this will be fun. A lot of fun today, guys. Thanks for hanging out. We appreciate you all. Make sure you're subscribing to the DNVR Gaming podcast on your podcast app. You're subscribing to the DNVR YouTube channel so you can catch us live and join the conversation. We're going to try to get to doing these regularly on Sundays, so make sure that you're catching up with us at this time. Really, really do appreciate you all hanging out with us. Can't do the show without you. And we want to hear from you. Hit us up in the Discord if you subscribe to the DNVR.com. Come into our gaming channel. Let us know what kind of topics in the future you want to hear about, what games you'd like to hear our opinions on, all that good stuff. We want to make sure that you're all involved as well. So once again, thanks for listening and or watching today's show. For AJ Hafley, I've been Drew Kreisman, and we will see you next time.